What is that? What the fuck is that?
In a season with already 3 Marvel vs. DC episodes, can this one make up for it with its unique direction and approach? Can either of those two aspects make up for its sandwich position between a peak episode and a champion ball winner? Can you live with yourself when cosmic levels of guilt and loneliness dwell deep within your very heart? These and more are all questions that Martian Manhunter vs. Silver Surfer aims to answer. So grab your chocolate cookies, silver spoons, and let's phase into this episode. Remember what they said about previous episodes balancing out versus stuff with character stuff? Well, they do that here too, just up to 11. The admittedly repetitive versus mumbo jumbo of "oh, they defeated this, they can keep up with that," they also bested Superman in this category, because with how many times they use him as a metric, who hasn't, is all balanced out by major personal moments explored in keen detail, regardless whether they're versus worthy or not. Perfect examples being John's telepathic connection with his loved ones being so strong that they cannot move on to the afterlife, or him using a shape-shifting to convince himself they were still here, like, Jesus man. Humor highlights include the whole God bit, or Boomstick giving up on trying to pronounce Mr. Mixfist's Pickle name. That was my very first time saying it out loud, by the way. You're welcome for witnessing history. They even managed to throw a subtle dig at the evil Superman trope, which funny enough they themselves indulged in last season. Boomsurf continuously shifts from amusing to "please disintegrate me where I stand," but the editing is really fun here too. Neither goes for the Jean Grey dig or with sheer confusion a Boomstick death joke. Again, the whole thing about Surfer refusing to harm the Starbrand host once he finds out that she has a child has nothing to do with his power skills, but it speaks volumes about who he is as a person, and that perfectly summarizes these breakdowns as a whole. It's something we got a bit of in Anthem and unfortunately very little in Darkbirds. Picture it like this: both combatants' mental fortitude is the main core focus of their breakdowns, how they decide to let go and move forward. So let's do the same and focus on the actual fight, because whoa boy, there's a lot to go through here. Just to convey how different this fight is gonna be, this battle between two cosmically overpowered heralds starts with something as simple as a ceiling fan spinning in an office. Norrin talks about how,
"In all of my journeys, I have never seen anything quite like this."
And he's not talking about John telepathically spinning his tea or them being in Twilight Zone. In fact, if you look closely at the very first shot, you can see photos from previous episodes, both in this season and the previous. Plus a poster of Discord in the background and a season 10 cipher. What does this have to do with the episode itself is something I delve into once we reach the climax proper. But in the meantime, I gotta say, I love how they differentiate their similar powers with different ways of shapeshifting, different visual for their telepathy, and even different sounds while phasing. Again, this season is full of they didn't have to, but I'm glad they did details. Speaking of, the initial black and white aesthetic perfectly fits with the old school sci-fi vibe I was hoping they were gonna channel from the trailer, and helpfully noir feel given detective. Then the colorful cosmic shenanigans they both get into perfectly captures both of their comic book natures. Speaking of vibes, there's a third layer as they managed to add some 90s space video game sprinkle in there too. Like in this sequence referencing the Silver Surfer game, and this first person shot right here, really managing to make me feel nostalgic about time periods I didn't even exist in, somehow. Throughout the fight, John insists on trying to peer into Surfer's mind, and I love how deeply they associate his character with his power, especially after the analysis. And both voice actors do a phenomenal job at capturing both characters, with Martian Manhunters sounding exactly like a Justice League Unlimited self, and the Silver Surfer also nailing the character, especially in the ending monologue. And there's a lot of flying through space, to be expected, but if you zoom in, you can see Space Hawaii from Stage vs. Rocket Raccoon, meaning this fight also takes place in the same universe as these other episodes do. Very nice detail. The animation on John's dragon form, my god. It's a very distinct art style, brought by the same person behind Indie Cross, especially compared to both the pixelated sprites and the 3D backgrounds. But to me, it just visually conveys how deeply John's shape-shifting goes, even to a setting the very medium is in. Also, the planetary slash year lasts less than a second, yet it feels more impactful than this entire bowling sequence from the last Capeshift match, really selling the power and scale so simply yet effectively. And we perfectly understand Silver Surfer's decision to skedaddle out of frame. I love how they channel into the fact that yeah, John can be pretty scary sometimes, be it as a phantom haunting your mind, a shape-shifting beast who tears to planets, or an alien roaring in defiance even while burning alive. Silver tries to make John chill out as his shape-shifting keeps resisting, in some other great animation, before he decides to use his own energy against him to throw him into the sun. This sequence may be short, but it displays the versatility given by elemental manipulation better than the entire previous episodes did. Also, just look at this 180 shot right here. I have no idea how pixel rigging works, but they cooked here. We get this very nice moment of John resisting to his weakness to fire, proudly reiterating his Martian heritage,
Nothing can best Martian might.
and then getting his opponent to compliment to his resolve. Then the two get into a clash in the center of the sun as the surfer forces John to feel pain. Noin tries to end it all with some disintegration, to which Manhunter's shape-shifting resists once again. And this scene is not only yet another standout I have to let play in full, but it's the very crux of this animation.
You and I possess the same knowledge. That only one of us can survive, and we know not why. I hope you can live with the uncertainty. Victory comes with no certain satisfaction. I may never know why we were made to fight, if violence is ever truly justified. But perhaps there is something worthy in the battle. Myria. Something beyond my understanding.
We've had funny death battles, epic ones, tragic, scary even, but existential is not quite the flavor that the death battle ice cream shop had quite tried yet. This entire sequence, taking almost a full minute to finish, goes to prove this to be the most story-driven battle we've had the entire show. Because it wasn't about the action itself, it's about two supremely powerful yet powerlessly alone kind souls slowly realizing they're in a death battle episode. And not in a Deadpool sense, but in a existentially dreadful way, rather. It's not a matter of them just respecting or empathizing with each other, no, they feel each other's thoughts and emotions right here. This episode perfectly nailed how to bring pacifist characters in a show like this. It's not about how much they can tear each other apart for whatever stupid reason, it's by not focusing on the violence itself. Which in turn gathered criticisms from people saying that, quote, very little if at all happened in this episode. Which wouldn't be true if you were to assess this episode by the metrics of a normal death battle, when it's really not. Nobody knew they were in a string of events fated to end in a good man's death. While John thinks Norin brought him here and is hiding something for him, he is, aka is trying to avoid making this battle start to begin with, as he flees from the scene, prompting the chase. And Norin manages to hold off for a bit until the script forces him to engage in combat. His Martian opponent on the other hand is pretty much following the script the whole time until the end. And once he manages to read the surfer to Harold's mind, he realizes that only one of them will see the sun shine another day. John expresses that he hopes Silver can live without uncertainty, in a tone that really can be interpreted as either sincere or spiteful depending on how you look at it. Silver tearfully obliges as he disintegrates the Justice League with a supernova, the latter's last thoughts being about his deceased wife. As John slowly disintegrates and Norin ponders about how this victory comes with zero satisfaction, we get one of the best writing in that battle history in this monologue right here. The ending with Silver Surfer just kneeling and grieving in silence after he had just taken a life, I swear, it just feels so powerful. I swear, I can just imagine the sheer turmoil hitting him from inside like his master eats planets. Granted, the end bit is a nice bookend to the vibe the battle was going for at first, but I couldn't have gone without it. You know, let Silver be alone in this moment of grief, alone in the cosmic darkness, as it unfortunately used being. Instead of this episode being about who can destroy more universes with more laser beams, the fight focuses on reflecting why they're fighting at all, with their cosmic awareness and telepathy respectively sensing something on the other side of the screen. Not even interacting or discovering, just sensing someone pulling the strings. And that is honestly a rather dreadful thought for this show. But this animation really does a great job at deconstructing what that battle very premise is, aka why are these two fictional characters put to kill one another, often for no good reason. They both realize it, but they cannot stop it. It's not really a matter of who wins, it's a matter of who's left to live with the grief and uncertainty on why did they have to go this way. I gotta say, I've been loving this season so far, but I want to especially praise the endings because so far None of the endings in this half season feel as if there wasn't any thought or effort put into them. They all had some quite aspect to it, and I gotta praise that especially. Much like the episode it was made for, Mind Over Matter is rather unique for the show. It's probably the calmest track that Battle has ever done, and also a standout since it manages to shine completely in its own light without resorting to nostalgic motifs, like say the themes for Justice League Unlimited or the Silver Surfer NES game. Not to insult the ones that do, just that, they kinda resort to stuff that's already been there instead of crafting something new. And I personally find that a lot more admirable, as I think it takes more effort to start from zero. But again, I still think Not to Actual Size and Nevermore are still great tracks. The first half is more the eerie, suspenseful vibe, kinda like detective noir side of things, again, much like John Jones, followed by an old school Star Trek-y sci-fi orchestra. But the last part is a mysterious, almost ethereal composition withholding the feel of a grand power from the stars, perfectly capturing both characters. But the epicness turns dim in the last notes, signifying Surfer's loneliness in the cosmos. So for the 8th time this season, chef keys on the music. The title perfectly fits with both characters' mental powers and Surfer's matter manipulation. And in general, just how much mental fortitude and philosophy is ingrained in both these characters, whether it's in general or in this very episode. The reflection of the respective home planets on the board is also a nice touch. It visually conveys a reflection, as in mental reflection, both towards the inside or the outside, is something both these characters do a lot. But backtracking a bit on the old nostalgia factor I mentioned a couple times already, it took a surprising amount of time for me to realize just how much nostalgia is ingrained in Season 10 overall. It's kinda inevitable given the theme of long time requested matchups finally happening, but still, even this one is technically no exception. Many grew up with Justice League Unlimited Martian Manhunter, myself included, and Silver Surfer really represents a side of mainstream Marvel that only got the limelight in the 2000s. This is 100% something I'll go back to on my Season 10 retrospective, so subscribe to not miss out on that. But back on the actual episode we're in, I would say the main theme of Martian Manhunter vs Silver Surfer is introspection versus contemplation. Despite sounding like synonyms, to contemplate actually means to think deeply about an idea or situation from different angles, and draw conclusions from that, whereas introspection is an examination of one's own thoughts and feelings, like both combatants can do on both ends with the telepathy and inner turmoil, but Surfer is the one right off the bat aware of something beyond either of them, something beyond their understanding. If Atomic is a jack of all trades as far as pretty good Marvel vs. DC episodes go, and Darkbirds really kinda crumbles for me once I got past the admittedly exciting visuals, I believe this episode blows both of them out of the water and deep into space, not just for its ambition alone, but in my opinion how it's a perfect Martian Manhunter vs. Silver Surfer story more than it is a perfect dead battle between them, if that makes sense. So I think it deserves top ranking. I'm really hyped for the next episode. I was a former brony and even shipped Discord and Fluttershy at one point. Nowadays I just think they're better off as friends. And I think Build Cypher is a great villain. So let's see how many layers of reality are gonna be torn apart next time. And until then, I'm Marco Krypton and I hope I made your day slightly better.